Good morning, everybody. Okay, let's take 1 minute for everybody to introduce yourselves. Okay, I'm Susana Leventhal. I'm a former assessor in TOK, and I've been a teacher for several years before you were born. So, okay, I hope we can have a very exciting experience here. So, please, in 1 minute, each one of you just introduce yourselves. Okay, Agnes, I'm going to call you so everyone will be able to do it on time. Okay, Agnes, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Agnes Korchak and I'm from Terranova, Mexico.
Okay, next one, Carla.
Hi, my name is Carla, and I'm from Navajo Preparatory School, and I'm a senior.
Okay. Sue and Jimena. Sue, okay. Sue Jimena, or is it one per? Yes, both, right? Okay.
Oh,
Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Sue, and we're from Williams, Cuernavaca.
hi, I'm Jimena. Jimena, and we are sophomore students.
Okay. Now, Irene or Irene, I don't know.
Yeah, hi, I'm Irene and I'm from Korea and I live in here in Mexico and the school is from Terranova.
Okay. Are you on an exchange program or you are studying there?
Oh, I'm studying here.
Okay. Now, Avery.
Hi, I'm Avery Hemmelreich. I go to school at Navajo Prep and I'm a senior.
Okay. Next one. It's sorry, I cannot see. Let me. Okay, it's Luciana.
Hi, I'm Luciana Gomez and I study in the Gimnasio del Norte School in Colombia. Nice to meet you.
Okay. And the last but not least, Alejandro.
Yes, hello. My name is Alejandro Morelos Montalvo. I'm here representing Colegio María Montessori de Monclova, and I'm from Mexico.
Okay. Well, I live in Monterrey, Nuevo León. I'm originally from Mexico. And okay, let's start right away. And the first thing that I want you to tell me is how did you unpack the phrase? Because it's you have you have a phrase that says that a lie told 1,000 times becomes truth. Okay, so how can we unpack that phrase? What are the key elements of that phrase? Here you have to, okay, Alejandro?
Yes, so I think what's really important to define first is what's considered a lie and what's considered a truth. So to define lie, I guess we could say it is the opposition of truth or like the contrary to the truth. And to define truth, of course, the Real or Royal Spanish Academy has a couple of different meanings to truth. So we could be taking a couple of ones from there, but I think essentially what truth means is something that can be proved and not changed, and that can be, something a consensus of people agrees is the truth, right? So the concept itself is pretty hard to define, but I think the main idea is just what's right in a certain context, right?
Okay, yes, very good. And then, okay, who can add something to what Alejandro said? Anything different from what he said? Yes, Agnes?
Sorry. I think that it should be important for this debate to consider if we are taking truth as an universal truth or as an individual truth. And in my opinion, I am basing my opinion thinking that truth is that we are considering it as a universal one.
Okay. Is there something that can be true in one context and false in another one? Because when you said universal truth, what do you mean by that, Agnes? Or anybody else if you want to intervene? Yes,
Sorry.
yes, Agnes? Yes.
I am talking about when I am referring to universal truth, I am talking that we are not taking in account the truth for the reality of just one person, but truth that is based in facts and evidence that will be the same in every place, and it's objective, and it's determined the same in all places.
Okay, that's exactly what I meant. Truth has to be objective and it has to be the same all over the world. Okay, we cannot think about something that is true in one place and not true in another one, because then what is truth? Okay, and that's what Alejandro tried to tell us. So, okay, and is there any other troublesome element in that phrase? So we can discuss it before we start giving examples or looking for something else. Yes? Yes, Alejandro?
Yeah, so I think the main aspect of, well, besides truth and lie, of course, but the main aspect of the question that's been proposed here, I think, would be the repetition. So the main thing I think we have to analyze is how does repetition play a role in whichever is considered truth, right?
Exactly. Alejandro is very right. Okay, the main subject we need to see is repetition, because that's exactly what the phrase means. Okay, if you repeat something, does that become true or not? Okay, Luciana, what do you think about it?
Well, like I could argue that these statements may be like partially true because constant repetition does not create objective truth, since like the truth itself requires justifiable and epistemologic evidence. But like, however, it can create social belief and acceptance through like subjective thinking, especially when knowledge is like influenced by authority figures, emotions, and even social media.
Okay, yes, and Mariana wanted to say something else.
Well, especially especially really wanted to clarify about the definition of truth well in this context because truth can be seen as how the truth is created, if it's a scientific or a fact that we can prove, or truth is a generalized belief that we all trust in that it's true. So the difference between a fact and the general belief, which one is really the meaning of a truth?
Okay, can you give me an example, Mariana? Mhm. Can you think of an example? Because is fact, you're mentioning fact and you're mentioning belief. Okay, what's the difference? Give me, or if it's difficult for you, we come back with in a moment. And can anybody else think of an example on how to illustrate that? Irene?
I think also an a clear example is that like vaccines cause autism, like a disability was made through repeated media. Like people all believed that, but in result it was scientifically false. So this shows that while repetition can distort perception temporarily, it cannot transform a lie into a truth.
Okay, you're very right. Okay, when we talk about the media, we're having a lot of problems right now to see what is really a fact that they are telling us or what is something different. Anybody else? Sue?
Well, I also want to add that this affirmation that a lie repeated 1,000 times but can become true is like in a certain way kind of right, because for example, if we take like for example laws or money, social rules, yeah, those exist because we believe in them and they are repeated 1,000 times. So I think this affirmation only apply when things of only human events, not for things like of nature, the body, or personal experiences.
For
Okay.
example, like in social media, sometimes it says like natural medicines are like more useful than pharmacological medicines, which is just a belief from people, and it cannot be true in part. So, for something to be
Mhm. I cannot hear you. Did you shut your microphone?
yeah, I wanted to finish that something to be true, we need like a justification and evidence to show that that's really what it's um, true for saying something.
Okay, can you give concrete examples? Let's try to ground a little bit what you're telling me. Okay, give me a concrete example. Yes, Jimena or anybody else that thinks, remember that we need to ground the phrase and not just talk about it in general. So, what kind of example can you give me?
Like I think like in social media, like sometimes when I say that before, like the natural remedies are always safer than pharmacologist medicines, and this information can get like repeatedly that people started to believe in it. So over time, this like is always on your mind, so you start creating that this idea that is true, but there's like any fact that proves that like medicine is better than other, like the natural to the pharmacologist. And yeah.
Okay, yes. Okay, anybody else? Okay, Luciana and then Alejandro.
Okay, so a clear illustration of what Jimena was like talking about is like the use of propaganda and repeated narratives in like a social political context. So, for example, the case of Nazi propaganda, in which like they repeated constant anti-Semitic lies until they became real and socially accepted by masses, even though they weren't real. They were just like facts that were spread out, and they were seen as truth because they were constantly repeated by a figure authority who was like the Nazi government. Well, yeah,
Exactly.
dictatorship.
Okay, you came to a point that I wanted to discuss. Okay, this example was given in the context of the Nazi government. The Goebbels, the main propaganda authority, said it. And since then, imagine, it's more than 80 years and it's still going on. And like you said, social media is telling a lot of things about it. And sometimes we believe it. Okay, so, okay, Alejandro, and Alejandro and then Avery.
Yeah, I just want to retake the concept of a universal truth. So I think I want to bring to everyone's attention here something I think is really relevant to take into consideration when trying to answer the question. And what I'm trying to say is I think we could consider two kinds of truth depending on the context or the statement we are trying to apply to the question, right? So we could take like an objective truth and a subjective truth, and the objective truth would be kind of a universal truth, as it was said, and it would be determined whether it's true or not based on metrics or rules that can be followed. And if like the statement does actually like follow those rules, then it would be considered truth, and otherwise it would be considered a lie. Whereas a subjective kind of statement like what's the best kind of cake or what's the best ice cream flavor or something would be more of a inherently subjective nature, right? So the truth would not be universal as to, well, because the statement itself is subjective, right? So I think it also depends a lot of in the context, whether whatever statement or idea is being proposed is actually considered truth or not, right?
Okay, but here let me point out something that I find a little bit shaky. If I say which one is the best kind of cake, is that my opinion or is it true?
No, well, of
Yes.
course. If you say, well, I like, let's say, cherry flavor. If you say I like cherry flavor, that would be an opinion, of course. But if you are stating cherry flavor is the best flavor, then that would be trying to state what like a truth, and in which case truth does in fact is in fact subjective, right? Because it depends on the person.
Well, let's see what your colleagues think about it. Okay, I'm going to give the word to Agnes, and then we go back to Avery. Yes. Okay, I haven't forgotten you, Agnes. Okay, do you have anything to say here?
Yes, I wanted to talk about repetition and this thing about like universal truth because I think repetition can't make something like a universal truth to everybody because even though it can like gain this credibility by being said a lot of times or being said by a figure that can mean respect or an authority for someone, it won't change the reality because, as they say, the example of the cake, maybe this lie will be a truth in the reality of the person, but it won't be a reality outside of of the person. It's not a universal reality, so it won't change the actual thing.
Okay, and that really is the difference between personal knowledge and community knowledge. Okay, so that should be taken into account. Yes, and then okay, Avery, and then Carla, then Irene, and then Alejandro. Okay, Avery.
So for the not specifically the Nazi example, I was sort of realized how much language and emotion play a role in sort of in relation to the quote, and how for language for the Nazi example, it was used a lot with like slogans and headlines, which shows that like language is central to repetition. And then
Mhm.
sort of emotion, the want to belong, and sort of the pride in it for the Nazi example.
Okay, and that's very important because language makes a lot of difference between on how we see things. Okay, who was next? Irene. Okay. Um, I cannot see the names now. Let's. Okay, Carla.
Going back to what Alejandro said, like when you said opinion, I think opinion can definitely be swayed into truth by individuals, like from an authority figure. Like, for example, if like the president of the United States said, like strawberry ice cream is the best, I think that it'll become like a universal truth to everyone that, hey, like I think ice cream that strawberry is the best. So I think that like authority figures do have influence over what is true and what is not. And it kind of goes into like familiarity over, if you hear the same thing over and over again with repetition, then eventually it gets mistaken for truth and is actually exposure.
Okay, and how can you challenge authority, Carla? How can you challenge that authority and make it what it is, an opinion?
I think just having evidence can help. I think if you speak out, right now they're
Mhm.
protesting over like what they believe is wrong in America right now. So I think that
Mhm.
is just a lack of just having or having evidence to justify and also protesting.
Exactly. Evidence is the key word. Okay. Then was Agnes, and who else was raising? Okay, it's Mariana and Irene. Okay, and then Sue and Jimena. Okay, then.
Okay, I think that for this phrase, it's very important to take in account critical thinking because, as my partner was saying, I personally don't think that if an authority like the president says that they have like they state that an ice cream flavor is the best, it won't be the same in every part. For example, in I don't know, in Europe, they won't think the same just because he is saying it. And I think that repetition is not enough in order to validate an affirmation if it can be contrasted with evidence and arguments, and that truth is not defined by popularity but by proofs, evidence, and arguments. So but even though like the existence of evidence won't mean that it will be accepted as a truth by everybody. Maybe a lie can be accepted by a truth, but that does not make it right or true.
Okay, that's true. All right. Then who was next? Mariana? Yes.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the connection between language and actually authority figures listing what's true and what's not. And actually, a really good example about this explanation through language will be on a book novel that George Orwell wrote of 1984. I think that was a really good example of the manipulation of what's true and what's a lie, because in this book we have authority figures in case of the government that not only state that, for example, 2 plus 2 is 5, because we all know it's a lie, but they state it's true, so everyone believes
Mhm.
it's true. But also that people don't have this critical thinking of actually question it, because the authority has also changed the evidence through language that this is not true. So I think that the register that we have, books, investigations, and yeah, evidence overall, let us this critical thinking of define what's true and what's not. Without this, any language or any authority figure that can have a lot of influence over people can state and change through however they want.
And let me ask you something. Can emotion outrule evidence? Okay, Carla raised her hand first and then Alejandro.
I think like what I thought of first when you said emotion, I thought of cognitive bias and how some people like will refuse to accept something if it goes against like their initial beliefs or just how they feel about something. So I do think that emotion does play a role in whether or not we accept truth.
Exactly. And that's what's happening if you go to social media and you like something, what happens? You create an algorithm and you're going to see a lot of things that you like, but you're not going to see the opposite side. So that's something we need to take care about. Okay, Alejandro, and then Williams Cuernavaca. Okay.
Yeah. So, of course, emotion can play a big role in influencing someone's beliefs and what they consider truth. But I also want to point out that repetition has as strong as an effect too. And what I've heard a lot of you mention, primarily with the Nazi example, is the presence of an authority who imposes an idea on its people to make them believe it's true. And I just wanted to state that it's not precisely always. There's no need for an authority. And here I did some research prior to the meeting right now. So I want to bring into the conversation the fact that Lisa K. Fazio, or Fazio, from the Vanderbilt Peabody College of Education and Human Development, did an experiment that's actually been done a couple of times now, but she did an experiment where they had this little character called Ruby the Robot, a completely original character, right? So nobody knows the character at all, like previously. So they have two groups, and this also correlates to, I think, who said it, the Agnes mentioned that evidence can counterattack in a certain way, like how authorities can impose a truth, and evidence can just contrast it, right? So there's this thing, they had two groups, right? So they had a group entirely made out of kids, and they had one entirely made out of adults, and they were around like 48 participants per group, and the adults were taken knowing like a couple of the facts that Rudy the robot was going to say. So both groups were told, um, Ruby the robot is gonna tell you a couple of statements, and some of which are true and some of which are false. And so that happened. They had like a recess, and then they come back in, right? And so Ruby says a couple other statements, some of which are the same as the previous, like before the recess, right? And so what happened is the results showed that the repeated statements were more prone to be considered truth, even when adults who knew beforehand, like what's the truth behind these statements, like which statements were truth and which were false, they also chose the repeated statements which were false as true, right? So evidence not always counterattacks or contrasts the beliefs, or like whatever someone imposes into you by repeating the statements. And I think it's very important to note that repetition of an idea has a very, very strong effect in shaping one's beliefs and whatever they consider truth. And I also wanted to point out, Carla, I think, made a great point about how opinion can become truth. So what I basically wanted to say is, like, if you have, let's say, an opinion, right? Of course, not like a subjective opinion. It's nothing like math related. So if you have a subjective opinion, like strawberry cake is the best, right? Retaking the cake example, and let's say you have a friend who thinks, blueberry cake is the best, not strawberry. They don't like strawberry, and you make them try strawberry and they like it, and you repeat them, like you repeat the idea that strawberry is the best enough, then that opinion that you yourself have, and maybe not even your friend, might become the truth for both you and your friend, right? So I think
Exactly, and
that's
that's
very
how.
important to take into consideration.
Yes, and that's how many lies evolve in truths. Okay, I think it was the first Irene and then Williams school, or was it like that? I yes, okay, yes, Irene, and then Sue and Jimena, and then Luciana. Okay, yes, Irene.
Yes, I think a topic kind of changed, but I wanted to re-link about truth. The truth can change. In aspect of like natural science and mathematics, there are still facts that are not revealed, and also the theory we justify it as a truth still can change. For example, like the Darwinism theorem and Lamarckism theorem, we believe that the Lamarckism theorem was true, but later that the Darwinism theory is true was revealed.
Okay, yes, you're right. Then okay, Sue and Jimena, and then Luciana, right? Or yes.
Easy.
Okay, well, taking into account all the other participations, I totally agree with what you are saying. I mean, for example, in the political context in our local Mexico, like we can say, there was like this political party called PRI. I don't know if you know it, but these political parties say to us, like, for almost 100 years, almost a century, that they were the best. They give us stability. They were the best. So it was the best option. But all the evidence pointed out that it was like really bad. Mexico was falling apart. So I wanted to link this with the Nazi example because even if a big organization like the government can tell us one thing, we all know by the evidence or what they do, what it is really the truth. And also, talking about science, I don't remember who said it, Irene, I think, is that, for example, if we believe that repetition became truth, then science didn't make wouldn't make sense. I mean, we will still believe things over 100 years ago. We still believe. For example, like the basic example, like the Earth is flat. We wouldn't believe like the evidence or the experiments that were done before that, and we still be very behind.
And I would like to say that I agree with Agnes. And I think another effect that happens when people start believing things is an effect called cognitive fluency, which is we process the information that we receive really easily. And a psychologist called Daniel Kahneman explains that when information is easy to process, our brains interpret this ease as a sign of truth. This is part of what he calls fast thinking, where the brain uses shortcuts instead of careful reasoning.
I want to point out something about your example about the flat earth. So, okay, the Greeks knew the earth was round, and they knew it, and they even measured it. Okay, and then somehow in the Middle Ages, the earth became flat, and then somehow it became round again. So, okay, these are facts that were proven more than 2000 years ago, and then they were completely dismissed by the beliefs of the people because they couldn't think of something that was greater than man, because man had to be the center of the earth, and because it was the center of the earth, then it had to be flat. Okay, so how come truth changes? Because they knew it's true. They didn't believe because they had examples, they had proofs according to them. Okay, I'm not saying that they were real, but how come this happens? It's one of the simplest examples, and it's one that you repeat a lot in TOK. So how come? So yes, so yes, so yes.
Sorry.
So, well, I agree, totally agree. I think that repetition can change what people believe, but not what it is the truth. So the earth didn't become round or didn't become flat or didn't become round again. It's just like the thing that people believe in.
Okay. And okay, Agnes wanted to say something, and Irene, and then Alejandro. Okay. No, Avery also. Sorry. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say to you, Susana, that I think that's like a very good example, because I think we are confusing here like factual truth and maybe this related truth, because truth is not meant to be reshaped. At least there are arguments that will be able to change them, because I think that in order to be able to discuss this phrase that they gave us in a more like organized way, we need to consider objectiveness, the objectivity, and it would be referred to the objective facts. And I think that this phrase should not be considered as a fact, but rather than that it's meant to project the fragility of knowledge and how society functions as a group, no? And the power it has to model and manipulate the thinking of people. But it can manipulate the thinking, but not the actual truth. For example, when they were saying about the kids and like this group of people that were made in an experiment, I think that it's also important to know that about like the example that gave also one of my partners about science and how like repetition would not make sense in it, because maybe a person that grows and is formed hearing the same narrative and the same ideas all of his or her life won't doubt about the supposedly truth that they were implied to, and it is the only version that they know. So people tend to avoid questioning their reality and even convincing themselves about a lie for fear of going out of their comfort zone. And I think that this also affects being in a group, because a person like in the psychological form, they won't want to be like against a group, because people is meant to try to get into one. So the lie is not considered truth because of its content, but because of the collective acceptance of it.
Very good point. Very good point. It really is something to think about. Uh, okay, let's go with Avery and then Carla.
I think that the quote sort of serves as a warning, and that without active questioning and critical thinking, shared knowledge can drift from the truth. And I think it really shows how humans are vulnerable knowers, and we can often create the illusion of truth through this repetition.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're totally right. And then Carla?
I like what you said about the flat earth theory, and how you said that like before, like a couple thousand years before, like people knew it was round, but then it turned to flat, then round again. I think that has a lot to do with consensus theory, about how if one person starts to believe it in, like we said, like 1,000 times, like, or a lie's told 1,000 times, like if it's
Mhm.
told 1,000 times with repetition, it'll be accepted by everyone because of consensus theory. If like one person believes it, then other people will start to believe it.
Exactly, exactly. That's the danger of not knowing really what truth is or not. Okay, Irene and then Jimena. Sorry, Alejandro, I'll give you the word later.
Yeah, I also agree with that. Avery said that we are so like vulnerable knowers, and I also think that the belief still affect to the truth because of the society and also the culture. For example, also again
Mhm.
recapping of that the theory of Earth is flat. I know that the theory was changed because like the cause of the religion, because in that era the religion was really almost a high even than the science.
Okay, yes, you're right. And it's paradoxical because now we also have people that believe that the earth is flat. And they have meetings and they go to congresses and they keep on arguing that the earth is flat. But in order for them to argue that, they are using satellites and they're using phones that prove that the earth is round. So this is the paradox of having a consensus that is not really very well proven. Yes, because that's you said two words that are very important: proof and consensus. Because a consensus doesn't make true if you don't have proof, right? And then, okay, Jimena, Alejandro, Luciana, and then Mariana. Okay.
Revisiting what Jimena said about like politics, sometimes repetitions becomes even more powerful when it's combined with authority. So I've discovered that a media theorist called Marshall McLuhan from 1964 said that argued that the medium and the source of information shape how messages are received. When authority
Mhm.
figures repeat an idea, people are more likely to accept it without questioning it. So
Mhm.
sometimes, like these people start like believing more and more and more about this information that is given. And for example, if a political leader repeatedly states of a simplified or misleading claim during speeches and interviews, supporters might accept it as a fact simply because it comes from a trusted authority, and it's heard
Mhm.
often, even when evidence contradicts the claim. Repetition and authority reinforce belief.
Okay.
Mhm.
And adding up to what Alejandro said of some experiment in the power of emotions, I also want to say another example. I don't know if you have seen it in social media, but there is one boy whose parents, because of a social or of a medical issue, they say that he was a girl. Everyone told him he was a girl. The doctors, the parents, the school, the society. Everyone told him he was a girl. But inside him, he didn't believe he was a girl. He didn't like connect the to being a girl. So I think
Mhm.
that personal experience can not be changed even if they say it a thousand times. So, well, and also completing to what all of you said about consensus, I think that a consensus can create a system, but it cannot like, I don't know, but it cannot change reality.
Mhm. Okay, and you're right. Okay, Luciana, Mariana, and then Alejandro. Okay.
Okay, sure. So, connecting with like what Sue and Jimena were talking about, repetition gains strength when it is like supported by institutions or even like authority figures. So, it's like really important to take into account a concept that it's called like shared knowledge. So, thanks to like shared knowledge, all those false truths, if we can call them like that, are like being spread out. So, for example, authority controls share knowledge because like institutions decide what is thought and like all the broadcast and like what's normalized. So, like through schools, social media, government, and religious leaders. That's why in the like theory of the flat Earth, everyone thought like at the moment, no, the Earth is flat, and then no, the Earth is round, because like all like the shared knowledge was kind of a lie and was not based into epistemologic
Mhm.
evidences. So yeah, like that's what happens.
Okay. Yes, Mariana.
I also wanted to add, especially because of the example of the that although it's proven that they are these rounders, people that still believe with all of their forces that the earth no, the earth is flat, and they use the same evidence of that the earth is round to prove that the earth is flat. So this tells us a lot
Mhm.
about how people actually build up what is true and what's false. What do I mean with that? Like we have the evidence, like science tells us that the evidence and the proof is needed to actually determine if it's true or a lie, but we also need the knowledge to actually be able to interpret it. So we got the evidence that may tell us that there is round or flat. If we're not able to interpret it correctly, we don't have the knowledge, the scientific knowledge in this case, to
Mhm.
actually say this is a good proof that the earth is round or flat, we can be able to actually state the truth.
Mhm. You're right. You're right. Okay, Alejandro, and then Agnes, and then Carla. Okay.
Yes, thank you. So there's three main things I want to point out. So first, I want to respond to Sue and your example of the boy who was told he was a girl, but he didn't believe it, right? So what I'm trying to say, with my example is the repetition does have holds a lot of power in whether a person believes something to be true or not. But of course, as you say, it depends a lot on the person, right? And their critical thinking skills. And I think that also correlates with the flat earth example that's being, tossed around a lot here. So I guess the boy girl example could be like one extreme case, and then the earth flat example could be another, where the boy girl example, like everything is against his beliefs, and yet he doesn't want to believe what everyone tells him, right? And the earth is round example, everything goes against the belief that the earth is flat, and they even use evidence that disproves their own theory, and yet they still believe, right? So it of course depends a lot on the person and the critical thinking skills they have. Now I want to retake also, Sue. You have been making very good points and very interesting thing. Yeah, like you have been pointing out very interesting ideas. So the truth changes thing, right? And how you gave an example with science, I would say science is kind of an ambiguous example to put here, especially because a lot of things that are stated in science are not entirely true, just because we as humans, we do not have enough evidence to prove or disprove whatever theories come out. Right? So I think as an example, like to just to clarify what I'm trying to say is we could take divergent and convergent evolution. So like convergent evolution might as well just be a giant coincidence, and we don't even know it, right? We do not have concise proof of anything. We cannot prove or disprove whatever's being said, yet we accept it as a truth, just because precisely because we do not have enough evidence to disprove it, right? But we also do not have enough evidence to prove it. So I think truth, like taking in account truth in the science context, is a little bit more complicated to determine, just because like we just do not have the enough knowledge to determine whether something is true or right and whether it's not. Whereas in other areas like mathematics, 2 + 2 is always going to equal 4, and we know it, and it's been proved, right? And I also want to quickly say, Avery, and the illusion of truth you made a while ago, that's really really good. Like, it's very on point, and it actually has a name. It's called the truth illusion effect. I just wanted to point that out. That was very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We need to start wrapping up. So please, Carla and Agnes, make it short so we can start wrapping up because time is running. Okay?
Okay. So first of all, I wanted to say about what Alejandro said about science. I think that's not a very good example because the evolution information, it's a theory. It's not a fact in science. So that's why we want to believe it's a theory, but we don't know if it's real or not. So I think that when they gave the example about science, they were talking about more than what has been proved, because in a lot of these philosophical definitions, we know that the truth, for being considered, it has to have a coherencia, coherence. It has to have indivisibility, that it's meant that it doesn't have like an intermediate if it's real or not. So that's why like we couldn't not take account like the evolutive theories, and it's also meant the truth is also meant to be defined by the concordance that it has. So taking in account back like the example of the flat Earth, I wanted to say that. First of all, truth is can be challenged because that's how humans have evolved. But these persons that are like arguing that no, like flat is Earth, I think that they are wrong because they are using evidence that does not coincide, and it's not. It's contradicting some facts. Like, I am not an expert in Earth, but I know that some facts that have been taken from there are contradicting themselves. And finally, about like the thinking about emotions, I search about like phenomenology, and it shifts the question of truth with external facts. So like the fact that reality is interpreted in another way, like the experience and the given meaning, does not mean that it will change the truth. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. And Carla?
I just wanted to say that this question, just going back to it, is honestly kind of asking us, like, is the reliability of human perception actually like reliable? And are we honestly as a society using our critical thinking skills, because that was mentioned a lot, like enough to actually question whether it is actually truth or a lie.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how everything is so easily accepted, like how you guys said, again, a thousand truths eventually become, or a thousand lies eventually becomes a truth. And that's just all I want to say.
Okay, well, now let's start wrapping up because I think that we're running out of time. Okay, just to let you know what I see about what you've been discussing, okay? You've been discussing it in many contexts and using a lot of areas of knowledge of TOK. And also, what I liked a lot about what you're saying is that you reflected how well you were researching the phrase, okay? So in order for that, imagine that if you're doing it in a TOK essay or you're doing it in an exposition, okay, what is valuable for you about what we just did here? Okay, what would be valuable if you are trying to do this in an essay that's going to be assessed outside, and or what, how could you use everything we discussed here to improve what you've already been doing in TOK? Okay, Mariana? Yes?
Well, I think mainly it's from the part of the perception of what is true or not in this case. So we have seen that it changes mainly from the area within it. Like mainly from science, we can say that truth is a fact that can be proved by evidence, but can also be discussable in terms of theories that have not been proved but have been accepted in science. So we can say that even though areas that are really objective as science can have their subjective sides, and that there is not really a truth that is determined by facts if there is no proven.
Mhm. Okay, very good. And okay, Alex, but make it short, please, so we can have time to hear more of your colleagues.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So it might sound very simplistic, but I think everything we just discussed is equally as important in like a context where we're writing an essay, discussing what's considered truth, what's considered a lie, and discussing it in different contexts. I think taking into account all that is really important to really come to a conclusion, even if it's not definitive. So I
Mhm.
think everything discussed is important, right?
Okay, you're right. You have to conclude and you have to answer the question. If you don't answer the question in an essay, then you will probably get a lower mark. Okay, Luciana, Avery, Irene, Luciana.
Yeah, sure. So like ultimately I think like for closing this up, that all like everything that we mentioned is very important, like to recognize and identify like the difference between the truth and conviction. So taking conviction as subjective thinking and truth as objective thinking following like certain criterions. Mm, so yes, I actually really believe that this demonstrates the application of media literacy and critical thinking abilities in different areas of knowledge. It's crucial, like especially when subjective thinking shapes
Mhm.
what people believe to be real.
Mhm. Very good, and very well put. Okay, it was Carl, Avery, and then Carla, right? Yeah. And
Um,
okay.
I think that everything we mentioned would be really important and to add into an essay or an exhibition. I think what we did at the very start, defining the terms within the statement, I think is really important to add in your essay, as well as counter arguments and like a variety of different arguments.
Okay, be careful. You don't need to define terms. You just have to unpack the title. And unpacking the title is looking for the difficulties of it. Okay, not always you need to define. Okay, because we all know what's truth, what's a lie. So do not focus on defining what is truth or what is a lie, but unpacking what are the difficulties that you're going to find in that title. Okay, Carla, and then Irene. Okay.
I liked how everyone presented different perspectives, because when like you just write an essay, you just kind of add your own just narrative and how you see it. But I think this helped me because I got to see different opinions being said, and I can incorporate that into my essay.
Uh-huh, exactly. Okay. Now who, okay, it was Irene. Then I guess that, okay, and then Jimena and Sue. Okay, Irene.
Yes, for me, I think the expansion and the unpacking of the essay was like valuable and noticeable. Like first, we started with the statement "a lie repeated 1,000 times becomes the truth," but we expanded through like different perspectives. Also, like the truth can be changed and linking with the belief. And I think also with the scientific consensus, I think the concept of like expanding and considering different perspective is the thing we can substitute into our essay.
Okay. All right. Then, okay, we go to Sue and Jimena.
I would like to clarify that I am Sue and she's Jimena.
Okay, yes.
And
I'm seeing your name in Jimena's face, so that's why but it's okay.
don't worry, don't worry. But I would like to say that this can help us also to point out our own ideas in essays, because our ideas are also valuable, and to develop our communication skills.
And I also want to conclude that language is a very powerful tool, and it is a representation of our thinking.
Okay, very good. Now, everybody, which examples were better? Which examples do you think you can use? Of course, the flat earth example, don't use it, okay? That could be a good class discussion, but not a good example for an essay because it's too simple and we do it. So which examples are good? Okay, Luciana?
Well, I think the 10% of the brain myth, which like actually says that we only use our 10% of like of our brain, while like science is like saying that this claim is false because they demonstrate that like each part of our brain is actually working in different kind of activities in our daily lives. So many people believe this claim of the 10% because it has been like constantly repeated through like generations, through social media, through like a lot of resources, and yeah, we can use that as a proper example, I guess.
Which examples fit, and do not be afraid of using personal examples, okay? Because personal examples are important. And for example, Jimena's example about the girl that thought she was a boy or not, that's that was a very good example. Just you have to work it a little bit more and give it more context, okay? And do not describe a lot. So, okay, they are telling me that we need to wrap up everything, that we need to say congratulations to all your teachers, okay? You're wonderful in arguing. They did a very good job in choosing all of you. Goodbye.